All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, it's put up or shut up time in the college football playoff with conference championship weekend set to kick off. And of course, the first question that you want to ask yourselves is who's out in regards to making the race for the college football playoff race or the race to get to the college football playoff. And after this weekend's action, we know for sure that you can stick a fork in LSU as the Tigers looked completely disinterested and going to College Station to take on Texas A&M. And of course, they knew everything that was on the line. But with that said, before they knew it, they had a very hungry A&M team. And of course, I guess they figured A&M was down on their luck this year. Okay, no big thing. But guess what? It's the final game of the season. It's a rivalry game, and these kids want to go out on a positive note, especially in front of their fans. And because of that, now uh, it's not going to have the same meaning, at least in regards to the SEC championship game this Saturday, because LSU still had a legitimate shot to get to the college football playoff, but that's done. Clemson is done as well. And with that, so are the fortunes of the ACC. You think about it because Clemson was one of those one loss teams, but obviously they not only needed to win out, but they also needed some help. And the downward spiral for Clemson actually began last week when North Carolina lost because the Tar Heels, they were ranked in the top 20 in the college football playoff rankings. They had an opportunity to stay, probably be in the top 15 when both of these teams got to Charlotte for the conference championship game this coming Saturday night. But of course, North Carolina lost last week, and then they lost again over the weekend to NC State. And then Clemson turned around and lost at home to an unranked South Carolina team. And of course, it's continued to be an up and down career at quarterback for DJU. And that was showcased yesterday. Clemson had a big sustainable lead at home, but for whatever reason, they could not sustain it. And I don't want to say for whatever reason, they faced a hungry South Carolina team. And because of that, the Tigers' playoff chances are done. Oregon had a shot, but blowing a 21-point lead to Oregon State yesterday solidified it. And the Ducks just simply came apart in the second half. A fumbled snap on a punt close to their own goal line, going forward on fourth and short in your own territory and not getting it. And this defense just self-destructing as they could not stop the Beavers' run attack. So again, and I keep saying this all the time when I'm talking about college football, winning in November, and of course, before I talked about the importance of being able to win your conference games and how difficult that those are, but then also the rivalry games as well. Clemson and South Carolina don't play in the same conference. Um, LSU and A&M, obviously that's a rivalry game. Oregon and Oregon State, that's a rivalry game as well. And it's so difficult to finish off your top rival. And I think we saw that again this past weekend. And for me, and I'm going to continue to say this, and I know it's not going to amount to a hill of beans in the larger perspective, but this is why the playoff field should not be expanded because in an expanded playoff scenario, LSU might still have a shot. Clemson might still have a shot. Oregon might still have a shot. But guess what? Their dreams of getting to the college football playoff are now done. And obviously, the powers that be are doing it for money. But at the end of the day, like it takes away from the importance and the magnitude of these games so close to the end of the regular season. So, with that said, you ask yourself, who has a shot or still has a shot to be the national champion? For me, Georgia is still the number one team in the nation. They continue to roll. They're going to roll into the college football playoff, and they have a legitimate shot to repeat as national champions. For number two, I'm going with Michigan. Obviously, the Wolverines were number three last week, and they just went on the road on Saturday to Columbus and obliterated Ohio State. And because of that, the Wolverines have to be the number two team in the nation right now. For me, TCU moves up from number 4 to number 3 as the dream season continues for TCU and head coach Sonny Dykes. And now they await K State in the Big 12 championship game this Saturday afternoon in Arlington. Number 4 for me, I'm going to go with the men of Troy, and I'm talking about USC. SC was ranked sixth last week in the college football playoff rankings, but I think due to the fact that they beat a very good Notre Dame team last night at the Coliseum in Los Angeles, so I'm going to leapfrog them and put them in that 4 spot. Now, I said if SC won out, they're in. And of course, they had 2 tough games coming down the stretch, or 3 tough games. They went on the road last Saturday to the Rose Bowl and beat a good UCLA team. Last night, we saw them hold off a tough Notre Dame team at home. Now they got to deal with Utah in the Pac 12 championship game. And remember, Utah handed USC their only loss of the season, a 1-point loss in Salt Lake City. The Utes are also the defending Pac 12 champions. And let's go back to last year's Pac 12 championship game in Vegas, where Oregon had a legitimate shot to get to the national championship, and then Utah beat the brakes off of them. So it's definitely something that it's not set in stone that the Trojans are going to get to the college football playoff. But if they beat Utah this coming Friday night, they're definitely in. So who else has a shot to make the college football playoff? For me, I only see 2 other teams at this point of the game that have a legit chance to reach the college football playoff. I've got Alabama at number 5, and I've got Ohio State at number 6. And I know some people are going to say, well, Ohio State was number 2. How can they fall that far in the ranking? And why would you put a 2-loss Alabama team over a 1-loss Ohio State team? For me, I look at the whole body of work, and I look at Alabama's 2 losses by a combined 4 points on the final plays of the game. They lost with due to a walk-off field goal against Tennessee in Knoxville, and that's when Tennessee was rolling. And then they came back a couple of weeks later and lost to LSU on 1 point on the 2-point conversion in overtime in Death Valley. 2 very difficult environments to go into and lose. And then on top of that, you're thinking about Alabama's schedule. This team did go to Austin and beat Texas, a very good Texas team this year. They went to Oxford and knocked off Ole Miss. So, these are a couple of games just to mention as far as like what Alabama was able to do this year, to like prove their worth as far as being in the mix. And on the flip side for Ohio State, I know that they just lost their 1 game. But they do have the Penn State victory over them that is darn good. They went to Happy Valley and dominated the fourth quarter, also beating Notre Dame at home. And after the slow start by the Irish, we saw that this is a very good team under head coach Marcus Freeman. And of course, the Big Ten overall is not as competitive, but Ohio State was able to navigate. But for me, just like it was for Michigan going into yesterday's games, I said that if one of these teams gets blown out, it's going to make it difficult for them to get to the college football playoff. I thought if it was a close game, let's say that Michigan beat Ohio State maybe 23-21 or something like that, the Buckeyes might have fallen to fourth, maybe fifth. And I think they would have gotten the benefit of the doubt to get back in. But you look at how the Wolverines dominated this Buckeyes defense for the bulk of the game. They ran the football. And then once Michigan really established their offense in the second half of this game, after the Buckeyes were trying to key on the run and they opened it up with the pass, the Buckeyes just got ran off of their own field at Columbus. So I think being that it is so close to the finish line, that could potentially leave a bad taste in the mouths of the committee. That is a big reason why I'm going to put Alabama slightly ahead of Ohio State. So with that all said and done, you ask yourself whose body of work is complete and which team gets in regardless of what happens in conference championship play. And for me, the only team that I could say is going to get a free pass at this point to the college football playoff is Georgia. I mean, Georgia's been the dominant team all season. We saw what they did to Tennessee a couple of weeks ago when they came to Athens, and Georgia is heavily favored against LSU. And I don't, especially after LSU just gave the performance that they did last night in College Station against A&M. I don't see anybody, and I don't see really anybody who's going to think that LSU is going to go out there and beat this Georgia team in Atlanta. For Michigan, they're still in a very good spot. But what happens if they lose to an unranked Purdue team in the Big Ten championship game, especially if they lose back? And I'm just throwing this out there for the sake of argument. Remember, the Big Ten West was really not that good this year. Michigan is expected to win this game while running away, just like they did last year when they took on Iowa coming out of the Big Ten West. But make no mistake about it, the Wolverines have done a lot of good things this year, but would a loss to produce slip them up? We got to wait and see. For TCU, of course, this is a team that everybody keeps hoping to see lose, and they don't. They keep on winning. But would a loss to K State in the Big 12 championship game knock them out of the top four? I'm not sure. And then finally, USC. USC has that last spot right now. So I think they're the team that's most vulnerable, but I also think SC is going to be the most determined. I think, and I'll talk about this later in the week when I give my keys to all of these conference championship games, is that USC cannot go out there and play tight. And then on top of that, they know that they're playing a good Utah team that not only wants to knock them off, but they want to win the Pac 12 for the second consecutive year and possibly go back to the Rose Bowl for a second consecutive year as well. But make no mistake about it, USC being in that fourth spot, they know that they can't slow down. And I think Lincoln Riley is really going to have his team their attention for this entire week in practice. They know they got a short week to get prepped to go to Vegas for the Pac 12 championship game. But nonetheless, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with USC when they take on Utah. And of course, at this point of the game, all Alabama and Ohio State can do is watch. And of course, they're just hoping for a slither of light, if you will, to their college football playoff chances to get back into the mix. But at the end of the day, if Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and USC all handle their business this coming weekend in their respective conference championship games, then at the end of the day, Ohio State and Alabama need only get worried about getting ready for their New Year's Six games. But at the end of the day, what type of teams will either Alabama or Ohio State field at that point? Because with all of the first round talent for both Alabama and Ohio State on their teams currently, I guarantee you some of the bigger stars on those teams are probably going to opt out of their bowl games and look ahead to the NFL draft. That's just the nature of the beast. You can't knock these kids with the millions of dollars that they have to potentially make from the NFL on the table. Nobody's really going to take a chance at this point if they don't have to, as far as getting hurt to end their collegiate career. But when it's all said and done, this is separation time. We're down to the final six that have shots to get to the college football playoff. And for Alabama and Ohio State, at this point, it's just a wing and a prayer, trying to see if one of these teams in front of them slips up in conference championship weekend. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line to be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.